Welcome everybody. Gary Neville is back from the USA, and here is the newest edition of his podcast from the Etihad Stadium, where Manchester City have beaten Liverpool 3-0. They've beaten them, Gary, thoroughly.
Yes, emphatic. A really good day for Manchester City. And look, before the game, I don't think there was anybody that was walking into this stadium with any great knowledge of what the score was going to be. I think just seen Michael Richards after the game saying that he was intrigued before the game. I think I was something similar. I actually thought and said that I fancied Liverpool just to sort of nick it. I thought they'd have too much for City up front. I thought that Liverpool's centre-backs would handle Haaland. But it was a really bad day for Liverpool. We'll come on to that shortly. I think the first thing to start on today is Pep Guardiola's 1,000th game. I think I scored in Sir Alex Ferguson's 1,000th game at Manchester United.
You did, Champions League game, Lyon.
Yeah, I scored. That's an incredible achievement, eh? And you just think about greatness. I mean, Pep Guardiola is a great manager. 1,000 games. I think you said, did he say 716
wins? Yeah,
wins, which is 71%, win rate, which is just obscene. And this isn't his greatest team or his best team that he's had in those 1,000 games. You think about the team he had at Barcelona, which is probably the greatest team of all time, and then the treble-winning team here and the title-winning teams. But what his team have done today is give them a glimmer of hope going into a November international break. That they're 4 points off Arsenal. They've got experience. They've got a few players who've been around the block, and they've got a manager who knows how to win. And if I was Manchester City right now, and I'm sure Pep Guardiola knows how to win titles more than any of us, he'll be just thinking, let me hang on Mikel Arteta's shoulder come March. Let me be close enough to him to apply that pressure. He's the one you wouldn't want near you. And today, for me, the whole fixture was around who's going to emerge, who's going to come out of this match thinking that they can challenge Arsenal, who's going to be the team that think they can get close enough to them. And I thought it would be Liverpool. I think City have been inconsistent, but I was badly wrong. And Pep Guardiola's 1,000th game was a really good one for him and his team.
So, if you say, and most people agree, that this isn't his kind of premium team.
No, it's not.
How do you categorise them? There isn't a David Silva, there isn't Kevin De Bruyne, there isn't Aguero, there isn't a Yaya Toure, all of these great players he's had. How do you sum up what this team actually is?
I mean, it's a team I actually like watching. I mean, it's imperfect. His teams that you've seen, particularly here and at Barcelona, were like clockwork. I mean, it's very difficult to maintain what Pep Guardiola was achieving at this club and at Barcelona, because I didn't see as much of his football in Germany, so I'm not going to comment on Bayern Munich. But you're talking about some of the most beautiful football that you'll ever see, to the point of, like, you come into games knowing the outcome. Whereas when I watch City now, you're not quite sure of what's going to happen. Today being a perfect example. But they are imperfect. They're a lot more physical. They've got Haaland up front, who is devastating. But again, he's not smooth in the way in which he plays, but he's an absolutely brilliant player. Nico Gonzalez in midfield. I mean, Bernardo Silva and Foden are still playing great football. But they're very different. They're very different in terms of, they're not as methodical in terms of their sort of combinations and passes and the way in which they link. They're not as good playing out from the back through their goalkeeper or their back four, but they're still a very good side. And it feels like a team that, Pep Guardiola's staying here to build another great side. And I don't quite think they're there, but what they do have is some players, you look through the spine of the team in Gvardiol and Stones, Diaz, Rodri, Foden, Bernardo Silva and Haaland, and the goalkeeper, who know how to win. So if they can keep those players together and somehow, keep some momentum going and get close, they're going to be really dangerous towards the end, just through their experience. But it is an imperfect team. It's a team that you don't feel is as consistent and reliable as the one that they've had previously. And that's understandable. You'll never see me criticise Manchester City over this period, because, through the period I was at United for 20 years, there were 2 or 3 seasons where you needed a transition to be able to build another side, and Sir Alex Ferguson did that. And when you keep a manager for so long, we were conditioned about 10, 15 years ago to say, you couldn't keep a manager anymore for a period of time and have success like it happened with Arsene Wenger, Sir Alex Ferguson, Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley. But you can. You can. Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, even Mikel Arteta. I mean, he's not had success yet, but he's been there for 5 or 6 seasons. So it does prove that if you have consistency in a great manager, you can deliver, continual success. And look, this is going to be interesting in this next 6 months of what happens with City. I would say there's still quite a lot of work to do to convince me that they're going to win a title. I think Arsenal are the better team, but they're the one team that I wouldn't want and the one manager that I wouldn't want on my shoulder going in down the back straight.
Just a quick word, if you would, on Jeremy Doku, who you made your man of the match today. I mean, he's a beautiful, sort of glitzy player, isn't he? Do you think there's substance there? Oh, steady. You can't hear me. There's a lot of viewers who prefer that option. Would you say he has substance to go with that glitz?
He's one of those players that I would describe as being a nightmare to play against, but probably a nightmare to play with, because you don't know what he's going to do. He sometimes holds the ball when he should release it. He sometimes releases the ball when he should hold it. He's inconsistent with his final cross or his pass or his shot. But you can never ever doubt his courage. And you think about the kid in the street that basically gets told to go and dribble and take players on. That's what I love about Doku. And today, I thought he was devastating in that game. In a game where Liverpool's tactic was to try and sit deep, be compact, be narrow, he's perfect, because he does have the ability to unlock a defence that's deep lying, who's got lots of players behind the ball, take not just one player on one-on-one, he can take 2 on and slip through the middle of them, and he did that a few times today. I thought it was absolutely brilliant to watch. And I didn't think Conor Bradley did badly against him. I didn't think Conor Bradley had a bad day. I thought he was one of Liverpool's better players. But I just thought Doku today was sensational. He was a difference maker. And yeah, well done to him. And if he can add that consistency, and it's usually the case that wingers are the most inconsistent players on the pitch, because they have the most difficult job to try and sort of do things that are different and win your team the game. So if he can add a bit more consistency and reliability to his decision making in the final third and his execution of the pass or the cross, he's got a great chance of becoming a top winger in the world. He just has to improve his intelligence and understanding of the game, and, like I say, be more predictable to his teammates and still be as unpredictable to the opposition. I do want to put a special mention for Mateus Nunes, the right back. I thought and have thought he's a real weakness for City. Every time I see Nunes at right back, and because Nico O'Reilly, he's excellent, Nico O'Reilly, but because he's young at left back, you sometimes feel that City's back four is just going to be more vulnerable. But Nunes has done a really good job out there today. In fact, if you said to me, name a second player for City on the pitch, I think he'd probably be out there in terms of sort of where I would place him. I thought he was really, really good today, and I think we're quick sometimes in our positions to say that a player isn't at the level, and I'm sure City fans have looked at it and thought, well, is he good enough? Can he? Why is he playing right back? We signed him as a midfield player, but he's doing a good job out there, and certainly today I thought he was excellent, and I think he deserves a mention.
Okay, so Liverpool, they beat Villa, they beat Real Madrid. There was a sense that all was well again. What's not well?
I think of all the games that they've had in the last month or 6 weeks when they've sort of been dropping points and losing matches, I would say that is a massive worry today for Liverpool fans watching that game. And I think Arne Slot will be looking at that game, particularly the first half, and think, that's nothing. That's a nothing of a performance. And I was trying to get my head around where it was, because just 5-6 minutes before half-time, it came to me that City had this game by the scruff of the neck. Go and get your second, because this lot have gone. Their legs had gone. It was almost as if they couldn't get up the pitch, they couldn't move, they were walking. And you never ever accuse a Liverpool team in this last 5-10 years of throwing the towel in. And they didn't throw the towel in today by any stretch of the imagination, but physically and mentally they look beaten. Now look, it has been a difficult week for them. They have had Villa, they have had Real Madrid, I get it, but today was such a big game, and to come out there and lack confidence, play so passively. They kept playing back the way. Konate kept playing back to his goalkeeper. Konate kept playing back to other players. I mean, Konate, after about 10-15 minutes, I was like, how many touches has Konate had? I went, obviously pressed my button here, you will have heard me. And he'd had 24-25 touches. And I said this about a year ago. It's not a tactic to let your centre-back have the ball the most in the team. Now, obviously, if it's Van Dijk, we know he can pass, but Haaland was shutting Van Dijk off. They were letting Konate have the ball. And it was almost as if they had no idea, Liverpool, about how to play through. Their tempo in the game was nothing. They looked physically really, really well short in the game. They looked physically short in terms of their running. physically short in terms of actually just getting out muscled. I thought Wirtz in particular, I thought it was a really bad day for him. We've been tiptoeing around him, haven't we, for a few months, around the fact that he's young, he's coming to a new country, but he's 120 million quid. You're going to have to stand up soon. I mean, he's obviously got something. He's a really good player. He's technically fantastic, but he's been mauled out there today by Núñez and by others. He's been chucked around the pitch and didn't deliver in the quality side of things as well. So his performance was a real worry. But physically, I was worried. Physically, I'd be worried if I was Arne Slot looking at that team. There's a few of them look like they can't run. And I always think that when you go on a losing streak, you start to doubt everything. And that's wrong, because obviously there's some excellent players out there with great attitudes. So it's not a time to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But Arne Slot's going to need this next week just to sort of reflect, look at what he's got, look at sort of how he sort of sets up post-international break, and think about how he fixes the problems, both going forward and in defence. They look terrible at the back. I thought they got messed around today. I thought it looked like City could score. Lots of goals. They weren't good enough up front. The combinations weren't there. Salah isn't in great form. Wirtz is a problem. Let's be clear. Let's just call it as it is. It's an issue. He's 120 million quid, and he's, to be fair, I said a few weeks ago about Kirkes that he looks like a little boy out there. Today I thought Wirtz looked like a little boy, and that can't be the case. He's a German international of great standing, and he looks well short in respect of what you'd expect in a top physical Premier League match. So they've got to get him up to speed. They've got to get that sort of little bit of tenacity into him, and that little bit of something that means that he'll start to get into form, because what they have to do is stick with him and persist, but they've got to find a way to get the best out of him. You've got Ekitike, it was challenging for him today. I don't think he got the service. Isak sat on the bench and obviously didn't come on. Problems all over the place, and he's got to identify where. Can
they still be a part of it, top end?
I'm going to say yes, just because I think that if it clicked, something could happen. They've got basically firecrackers in that dressing room. They've got world-class players, and they've got big characters. Alisson, Van Dijk, Salah are huge characters. They're Premier League greats. So if they can just pull it together with the manager, who's obviously had a great first season, and the young ones can start to gain some confidence. I'd put Robinson as well in terms of the experience that he's got, and McAllister into that second band of players who've got experience around Van Dijk, Alisson and Salah. But at the moment, there is a worry. And today, it looked like a team in the first half that physically and mentally was short. But another thing that, and sometimes it can happen, it looked to me like they concentrated. And I might be completely wrong, because how would I know what they've worked on in the last 24, 48 hours? It felt to me like sometimes you can play a game where you've thought so much about how to stop the opposition that you forget about one of the most important things as a top club going away from home in a big game, is you've got to play. You've got to take the ball, you've got to have rhythm in your passing, you've got to demonstrate authority. When you're in playing that first 5-10 minutes away from home in a big game, you're sending a message in that first 5-10 minutes to the opposition players and the ground, the stadium, the 50-60,000 people in here, that we are ready to play and come and take you on at your own game and be able to sort of stand up and be counted. Liverpool shrunk, I felt, in that game in the first half. They shrunk, and I could never accuse them of that. I thought it was a really, really poor performance. It was one of the worst that I've seen from a Liverpool team for a long, long time, in terms of them being sort of insular and sort of just a little bit, not scared, but a little bit sort of like they didn't know what to do. And yeah, I think it was a worry. Second half, they got a little bit better, but do you always get a little bit better? I actually would have expected to see substitutions at half time. I think it was worthy of 2 or 3 of them coming off and doing, but Arne Slot's, very experienced. I can understand why he maybe said to the players that are out there first half, get out there and give me a better 10-15 minutes than that, or else I'll make changes. And he did that, but yeah, the third goal was a killer for them. They might point towards that Van Dijk header in the first half. I thought it definitely should have been a goal. But I think from what Van Dijk's just said on here, he said, I don't want to really talk about it. And I think that's the right approach. When you've lost 3-0 and you've been well beaten, don't whinge about a refereeing decision. But I do think it would have made a difference, and I do think it was definitely a goal. I don't think it affected Donnarumma at all where Robertson was. So that they maybe feel hard done to with that. But they need to basically go and have a good look at themselves, because they've hit high standards, that team, and a group of players who know how to win things, and they'll know that they're nowhere near at the moment.
Arsenal are still top of the league. After a night I was at Sunderland last night, Gary, and I'd forgotten, I haven't been there for 9 years.
Yeah.
What a fabulous thing they've got there. It's a great football stadium. Their people are so invested in that team. They were terrific, and they took points from Arsenal. I presume you saw most of the action.
I saw most of it before I went and watched Richard Ashcroft, and I didn't see the final goal. But I can imagine, obviously I've seen it since. Brilliant for Sunderland. I thought it would be awkward for Arsenal. I don't think there's any shame whatsoever in Arsenal drawing that game. I think that you'll always feel that when you're winning as a big club and then a team equalises against you, it's a sucker punch. You feel like it's a killer for you. But you're not going to have it all your own way during a season. They've been sensational, Arsenal, in this last 6 to 8 weeks. But that was a game that always had a little bit of a sort of banana skin around it. It just felt that way. Sunderland, the way in which they set up defensively, they're very well organised. They've got a real threat going forward. They've got a momentum in the stadium. The fans are with them. They're back in the Premier League. And, I remember going up to Sunderland. I remember going to Roker Park and playing, let alone the Stadium of Light. And, when it's rocking up there, it truly does rock. And they've done brilliantly this season. The first game of the season, I was massively impressed with them in that performance against West Ham, and I know West Ham have had a challenge at the start of this season, but the right sort of attributes, the right sort of principles of a team coming up, being hard to beat, being physical, running forward with real sort of aggression and sort of meaning and passion, and getting balls into the box and filling the box, things that I just think are simple things. A team coming up from the Championship, we've seen some right nonsense over this last few years of players playing out from the back and trying to be sort of Pep Guardiola's Manchester City when they've come out of the Championship. It's impossible to play football at that level like Manchester City can do. So I'm glad that we're seeing what we're seeing from Leeds and from Burnley and from Sunderland, which is a more pragmatic style, but I think equally as effective and more. I actually think, to be fair, when you see a team play like that, I really admire it and love watching it.
And from an Arsenal point of view, acknowledging obviously that it's irritating, to say the least, to concede in stoppage time.
Very.
Would you go so far as to say that actually that point at Sunderland isn't too bad? That's a really hard place to go.
No, I'm not sat there at all watching Arsenal get a point there at Sunderland yesterday and thinking in any way, shape or form that I'm surprised. In fact, in my predictions earlier on in the week on the podcast, I said I thought it would be a draw. So I'm not sort of rewriting history after the game. I genuinely thought this could just be a game that might just catch them out a little bit and cause them a problem. And they've conceded 2 goals. They've conceded a goal in the last minute. That'll hurt them because they're a proud team defensively and they're a great side defensively. But they've got to accept that then just, it's a Premier League, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and there are going to be some bumps along the way. And I just think that was one of the bumps that you get. The main thing is when you get a bump like that, obviously they're not going to be able to get straight back on the bike because obviously they've got an international break. But I wouldn't be in any way, shape or form putting that down to anything other than what normally happens in a Premier League season. That thing that you would say to yourself is, did you expect to win every single match? No team does that. Manchester City at their very best haven't gone through a season winning every single match. You're bound to drop points. You are going to lose games and drop points, ordinarily, and that's what's happened. But I wouldn't be screaming and shouting if I was an Arsenal fan, and I know they're not. And I certainly wouldn't be sort of screaming and shouting if I was an Arsenal player or coach, and I know they're not either, because Mikel Arteta will be they'll be really disappointed, because it'll just give you that when you lose a game like that, when you draw a game like that with a goal in the last minute, it's like having a cloud over your head. You try and forget about it in the next 24, 48 hours, but it just comes back and you think, and you just gives you a bit of a sickly feeling. But it's normal. That's what happens to teams that are proud, that are used to winning and want to win a league. They should feel like that, but it's important that when they come back in a couple of weeks, they get after that 3 points and win the next game.
The other big winners at the top end this weekend, a couple of obviously high-profile draws, but Chelsea got a win. They had Wolves at home, and Wolves are the story club this weekend. They've got rid of one manager. They had a caretaker in charge yesterday, and Rob Edwards has chosen to cash in a promotion race with Middlesbrough for a relegation scrap with Wolves, which is his club. He lives locally, he has family. You can see all sorts of emotional attachments, but it's an interesting career choice. What's your take on all of that?
I mean, that's the thing really, isn't it, for Rob Edwards, that he's local to Wolves. It's the probably dream job for him. And he wouldn't have wanted to hand his notice in at Middlesbrough and exit there lightly. I mean, Middlesbrough will be absolutely furious and they'll feel badly let down, the Middlesbrough fans. A great club that I'd like to see back in the Premier League at some point in the future, because of just generally my memories of playing up there and knowing how those great Brazilian players, other players that they had, Gaza and Merson and all the others. So for me, I want to see Middlesbrough back in the Premier League, but I can see why Rob Edwards has jumped ship. He probably will say when he finally speaks and he is appointed that this is the only job that he would have done so, and he'll be apologetic. He'll feel like he's letting, sometimes in life you're making a decision which is right for you and your family and what you need, and you have to look after number one. I know people talk about loyalty, and loyalty is very important. I stand by it, trust and loyalty, but if you get an opportunity for something that's so brilliant for your life and for your family, then not many people would turn that down. I think if Middlesbrough fans can probably try and understand that, as much as it won't help them right now get over the disappointment and the feeling of being let down, I think they'll probably recognise that Rob Edwards is a Wolves fan, and if someone was offered the Middlesbrough job and it was their dream job, they'd expect that person to leave and go and take it, and they wouldn't think anything of it.
And of course, he gave us a lot of fun at Luton for a while, didn't he?
He did.
He engendered something. There was a spirit about him, and he made that sort of a family club.
It's one of the great achievements, Luton getting to the Premier League. So, look, I mean, have Wolves appointed him in the... No team, I don't think, have ever stayed up from the position that Wolves are currently in. It's an awful start to the season. They look well short. So are they planning already for what could be an inevitable relegation? I know that they'll say all the right things, but... yeah, it's a big job for him to go there and try and turn that round, and maybe they're preparing for what would be a championship next year, which, you get the parachute payments, and they want obviously someone who knows the championship to be able to take them back up. So yeah, they'll have a free hit. Rob Edwards will have a free hit in terms of trying to turn it round, but he'll also have to start preparing for what could be an inevitable relegation, and there's a long way to go, but it doesn't look good.
No. Any other business, Gary?
No, I don't think so. I think that I watched obviously the United game yesterday at lunchtime. That was a game that swung back and forwards, a game where you're thinking that Manchester United can go into second. They're winning, you think manage and control the game, and all of a sudden Tottenham go and score 2 goals, and you think it's euphoria for them, and you're thinking then at the end of the game for United it's a good point, and for Tottenham they'll be disappointed that they've sort of given away that last minute goal. But yeah, I think that both of those clubs, United and Tottenham, will just be a little bit... I mean, look, it's been a good month for United. United started this month by obviously beating Liverpool after the last international break, and they've got 8 points out of their 4 Premier League games, which, if you just said to me, Liverpool away, Forest away, Brighton at home and Tottenham away, I said 8 points is a great result. But because they got 6 in the first 2, there's an element of thinking, well, if they just got another 2 or 3 points, they'd be right up there at this moment in time with second. But I think United should really be looking, and Tottenham, if they can get it right, more United really with the fact they're not in Europe. I think it's tougher for Tottenham with the fact that they've got the European games, but for United they really should be thinking around top 4. They really should, because there's no one grabbing it at this moment. You look at Chelsea, they're sort of obviously up there at the moment, and you've got Tottenham who don't look sure, Liverpool are not sure. It's there for the taking. And so it's about consistency now. After this international break, I always think this is the sort of biggest frustration, these 3 international breaks that we have. And then I think to myself, you've got then 2 or 3 months of lots of sort of games, the winter slog, if you like. This is what, it'll sort the teams out, sort everybody out over the winter period, and you come out of January, and then you start to see where really everybody is. But there's a good opportunity for United. Bournemouth have lost today. I think Forest have picked up, that's decent win for Forest. They've picked up 4 points in 2 games, so it's starting to equalise itself out. It's starting to work itself out. But interestingly, I think today the big story obviously is Pep Guardiola's 1000th game, and that City are within 4 points of Arsenal, and they've dominated the champions. And Arne Slot's here doing his interview now, and I think he'll be very worried tonight.
Penalty miss, Ballard's costly error, and Brobby's high boot, breaking down the controversial moments from Sunderland versus Arsenal. Football London takes a closer look at the key refereeing decisions that shaped Arsenal's 2-2 draw with Sunderland, including a missed penalty call, a disputed Daniel Ballard goal, and the dramatic late equaliser that left the Gunners frustrated. For the first time since their draw with Manchester City, Arsenal dropped points, held to a tense stalemate at the Stadium of Light. Mikel Arteta's side faced one of their toughest and most organised opponents of the season and looked on course for victory, until Brian Brobby's stoppage time strike silenced the travelling fans. It wasn't just the result that stung. Several refereeing controversies added fuel to the frustration. After falling behind early, Arsenal saw 2 questionable calls go against them, both of which could have swung the game in their favour. Referee Craig Pawson once again found himself at the centre of the post-match debate. Below, Football.London reviews the major incidents from the match. 1. The missed penalty on Mikel Merino. Early in the first half, a dangerous cross from Leandro Trossard caused chaos in Sunderland's box. As Mikel Merino went up to challenge for the ball against former Arsenal defender Daniel Ballard, the Sunderland player raised his left arm and caught Merino hard in the head before heading the ball away. The Spanish midfielder collapsed to the turf and required lengthy medical attention, forcing multiple stoppages in play. Analysis. If that type of contact had happened anywhere outside the box, it would almost certainly have been called a foul. Ballard made clear, forceful contact with Merino's face before winning the header. Similar incidents, like Victor Gyökeres's denied penalty against Newcastle when Nick Pope touched the ball first, have been ruled inconsistently. In this case, the contact was obvious, and if the referee didn't see it, VAR should have intervened for a clear and obvious error. Verdict: incorrect decision. Penalty should have been awarded to Arsenal. 2. Zubimendi's yellow card and the questionable free kick. In a moment of irony, this play began with what looked like a missed foul at the other end. Granit Xhaka appeared to clip Ebereki Eze from behind on the edge of Sunderland's box without playing the ball. Seconds later, Sunderland broke forward, and as Martin Zubimendi stretched to intercept, the referee blew for a foul and booked him for stopping a counterattack. Sunderland scored from the ensuing free kick, a sequence that changed the game's rhythm entirely. Analysis. Replays showed Zubimendi clearly got a firm touch on the ball before any contact with the attacker. If a foul had been called, a yellow card would have been fair under the stopping a promising attack rule, but in this case, it was simply the wrong call. The official also appeared to miss the earlier foul by Xhaka on Eze, another moment that influenced the play's development. Verdict: incorrect decision. No foul should have been given. 3. Brobby's high boot and the late equaliser. Just when Arsenal looked set to secure all 3 points, the Gunners were undone in stoppage time. In the 94th minute, Brian Brobby found the net after a chaotic sequence inside the box, drawing Sunderland level and sending the home crowd into celebration. Brobby appeared to lift his foot dangerously high during the challenge with Gabriel, who went down holding his face immediately after the goal. Despite brief appeals, the referee allowed play to continue, and VAR confirmed the goal. Analysis. On review, there was some mutual contact. Gabriel tugged Brobby's shirt noticeably in the build-up, while goalkeeper David Raya misjudged the flight of the ball and failed to clear it effectively. Though Brobby's leg was high, the challenge didn't appear reckless enough to warrant a foul, and Arsenal's defensive errors did most of the damage. Verdict: goal stands. Not enough evidence for a foul. Final takeaway. Arsenal will feel hard done by, with at least 2 critical calls going against them in a tightly contested match. For Mikel Arteta's team, it was a reminder that fine margins and officiating inconsistencies can change the course of a game, and perhaps over a long season, even the trajectory of a title challenge. For Sunderland, it was a night of grit and resilience, and for Craig Pawson, another performance under the microscope. In the aftermath of the 2-2 draw, the debate over Craig Pawson's performance and the use of VAR dominated both media coverage and post-match interviews. Arsenal's frustration was palpable, not only because of the lost points but because the team felt they had done enough to win, only to be undone by what they saw as inconsistent officiating. Mikel Arteta, who has been vocal in the past about refereeing standards, remained measured in his comments but couldn't hide his disappointment. He acknowledged his team's defensive lapses late in the game but also alluded to the small details that went against them. Those close to the manager described him as visibly frustrated in the dressing room, emphasizing that such decisions can change the momentum of an entire season. Behind the scenes, Arsenal staff reviewed the match footage extensively, pointing to specific incidents that they believe should have been handled differently by both the referee and the VAR officials. Club sources indicated that the Gunners plan to raise the matter formally with the Premier League's refereeing body, PGMOL, not in protest of the result but to seek clarity and consistency in future decisions. Analysts and pundits were quick to weigh in as well. Former players on post-match broadcasts noted that the lack of VAR intervention in the Merino incident was difficult to justify, given how clearly the Sunderland defender's arm made contact. Others pointed out that Zubimendi's yellow card, which led to the free kick and subsequent goal, was a turning point that unfairly tilted the game's balance. Meanwhile, Sunderland's perspective was understandably different. Manager Tony Mowbray praised his team's resilience and fighting spirit, highlighting how they continued to push until the final whistle. "We showed character," he said. "We went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the league and earned it." The draw, however, sparked wider discussion across English football about officiating consistency, especially in matches involving top sides. Former referees appeared on sports networks to analyze Pawson's decisions frame by frame, with most agreeing that while none of the calls were egregious, the cumulative effect painted a troubling picture of indecision and inconsistency. For Arsenal, the result meant more than just 2 dropped points. It was a psychological blow in a title race where every margin counts. The late goal from Brobby not only denied them victory, but also exposed defensive vulnerabilities that Arteta will be eager to address ahead of their upcoming fixtures. In the broader context, the match served as another reminder of how officiating remains one of the Premier League's most polarizing topics. Whether it's a missed penalty, an overlooked foul, or a subjective interpretation of clear and obvious error, moments like these continue to influence outcomes at the highest level. As the league moves deeper into the season, both Arsenal and the officials involved will feel the weight of this result, one as a setback in their campaign for consistency and silverware, the other as a fresh entry in an ongoing debate about accountability in modern refereeing.